And that's one place, though, that you got to watch out because the Browns can't stop anybody against the run this year. So don't sleep on those backs. You got Steven Jackson, and you've got the young Devontae Freeman, who's got fresh legs there, too.
Yeah, they might end up throwing the same 1-2 punch that we're going to throw at them with West and Crowell just to try to keep things. I think the way this game is going to go, I mean, we're looking at, Josh Gordon coming back and everybody's eyes get big and like now we can, open up the passing game because the Falcons have the worst passing attack and worst pass defense in the NFL. They're giving up 281 yards a game, which is the worst. So I think, great, we can throw all over those guys, which might end up happening. But I think that this game is going to come down to who can stop the run because it's going to be a situation where the only way to stop the other team's passing game is to keep them off the field, to keep your guys on the field, run the ball, eat up some clock, get some 10, 11 play drives, and just neutralize them by keeping them off the field. Another problem that the Falcons have is they have a hard time finishing. The last couple of games, they won by kicking a lot of field goals. They've stalled out in the red zone over and over. They were able to kick a lot of field goals, but they didn't find the end zone very much. They threw a couple touchdowns to Roddy White and a one carry for Steven Jackson in the last 2 weeks. So they only had 3 touchdowns in these 2 victories. So they're a little bit vulnerable, and it's going to be a matter of, like I said, the Browns, whichever team can control the running attack and pretty much keep the other team's prolific passing game off the field.
Right, and we'll look at the Browns offensively. You're right, because I think they have some opportunities here to do some things against Atlanta. But speaking right on what you're talking about, Matt Ryan, who I like Matt Ryan. He's slumped. He slumped in the middle part of this season, something awful, but he's still 5th highest. Now, granted, I don't go with the yards per game because that. If you lose all your games, you're going to have high yards per game sometimes because you're throwing at the end of the stretch, But Roddy White has come on in his last 4 games. He's got 28 catches. He's averaging 7 a game, over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's gotten himself going a little bit there. That's one of those weapons that we talked about. And I'm with you as far as both teams running the ball. That's going to be the key. Atlanta, I think we've mentioned it a couple of times this week, but they are bad against the run, but they're last in the league against the pass. Defensively, that's where the Falcons have issues. Overall, I believe they're 27th in the league defensively or something like that. The key for the Browns is going to be ball control. And then, as I was about to say, I think the Browns offense can get going against these guys. As I said, they're 32nd in the NFL against the pass. But, I like talking to the coaches, listening to them this week. What they said, Kyle Shanahan and them, say, hey, man, you go pop the film in on Monday and Tuesday and don't know these guys' stats, you'd have no clue. You'd have no clue where they were ranked because they got guys that could play. Every team does. We just saw that last night. Even you at the beginning of this conversation, Jeff, fell into the trap of saying, well, they played this team and they're not that good. I mean, look at last night. Kansas City, a team coming in red hot, looking like, man, now they're starting to look like what people thought Kansas City was going to be here this season. They were 5 in a row and they were right there with Denver, and then here comes the Raiders. The Raiders get the victory. You know what? Who had that one? Who had the Raiders getting their first victory of the season last night? I'm not saying. I mean, it is what it is. They snap a 16-game losing streak against a team that was red hot, and it was everybody was just looking past that. Everybody was looking. I don't know. I know me didn't have one person that listens. None of you guys said, "Hey, I smell a Raiders upset tonight." So I didn't hear anybody say it. Now, if you want to tell me you did now, that's fine. But I didn't hear anybody say that yesterday before the game. So as we know, man, it really is the matchups from week to week. And speaking of that, by the way, Derek Carr is getting better as he goes on, man. He may end up being a quarterback in this league, man. I mean, I know it's still small sample size, but he did some good stuff last night, man. He had a long drive down at the end of the game to take care of business.
Yeah, I think Derek Carr is going to be good. I really would not have been upset at all if we had ended up with Derek Carr. He's not going to, turn out to be a world beater overnight, but, somebody who's a few years down the road could be good. Of course, with the Raiders, he's going to got to get in there and take his lumps and all these losses. Of course, finally getting his first win yesterday. But I think he's going to be just fine. He'll probably have a much more successful career than his brother.
Yeah, I was one of the guys, too, that was intrigued by him, man. And I guess we'll watch it from afar here, but I'll be interested to see where he goes. But I just liked, hey, man, anybody going nearly 20 plays down the stretch of a game as a rookie to win, that takes a little bit of, you got to not get rattled there to go out there and do it, too. And how about at the end of the game? How about Justin Tuck, man? That's what teams need, guys that have been there to grab guys by the helmet and say, act like you've been there before, man. They really could have gave a free pass if they hadn't gotten back to the line, talking about Mack and the other backer who was celebrating after that sack at the end of the game. And they had to call timeout to get him back before they got caught there offsides because they're celebrating while the Chiefs are trying to get back and run off another play.
Yeah,
so
that's
what if that backfires on you?
Scenario.
What if that backfires on you? You got to call that timeout, and the Chiefs are able to put something together, and they score on the last play there, and then you go, oh, man, if we wouldn't have called timeout, the clock would have ran out, blah, blah, so on and so forth. So, that's where having those guys that have been there to go, hey, what are you doing, young fella? That's why I got no problem with Brian Hoyer running up to Terrence West and going, get over there on the bench, man. Come on, son. What are you doing? Speaking of Brian Hoyer, I think he has a chance to do well. As we mentioned, the Raiders still on my mind. The Falcons pass defense last in the league, and Gordon coming back. He's had a good week of practice. I don't expect him to throw 30 times his way, but I said it earlier, I think they go to him early. I think the first play of the game, I could see a play action just to say, hey, we got to, and Coach Pettin talked about that. He said in practice, we were guilty of playing too much with the new toy. He said we have to remind Brian Hoyer that there's a reason that the offense has been successful, and it hasn't been locking in on one guy. It's been throwing it to whoever's open, because I guess the first day in practice, everything was very heavily going in Josh Gordon's direction, just because he said it was like opening up the new toy at Christmas, and all of a sudden that's what everybody wants to play with. But all of them, Shanahan, Hoyer, all of them have to keep mindful of letting the game come to them and not just trying to throw it to Josh Gordon over and over again.
Right. Hopefully the Falcons will be putting a lot of attention his way,
yes,
so that'll open things up for Hawkins, open things up for Taylor Gabriel and Travis Benjamin. You got to give those three guys a lot of credit. I mean, all this time, 10 games without Josh Gordon, they held up pretty darn well, especially Andrew Hawkins. I think they proved themselves, and I would be happy to see them, get rewarded with, despite Gordon being out there, getting a decent amount of receptions, and hopefully Hoyer will be able to spread things out and really keep, the Falcons, like we said, last in the league, hopefully keep them back on their toes, not just with Gordon, but with everybody else. And then you can set things up, you can really keep them off balance with the play action, and then you've got a nice offense that's going to be going well. And also, we should mention that hopefully, I think that the situation with Ben Tate is going to have a positive effect on Terrence West and Isaiah Crowell, knowing that they're the guys. They're going to both get a lot of carries each game, and they can, really both have a chance to really shine. So hopefully that'll be, a positive for those two, even though it was a negative personal thing for Tate, although he's got a job anyway now with Minnesota.
Right. What's your gut tell you? Just forget the X's and O's. What does your gut tell you, Josh Gordon? How much does he play? Because I do think that it'll be an equal distribution of the reps. I do think that the Browns are going to be over the top mindful of that here, because you don't want to, you don't want to look at guys that have been there for 10 weeks who didn't screw up and say, hey, now you guys take a back seat to this guy, and I think that Mike Pettin's going to be very, very conscious of that. But do you think he comes in and everybody's got an opinion. Can Josh Gordon have an impact in his first game back? What do you think? Does he or doesn't he? I know he's going to have an impact on how Atlanta defends the Browns. That alone is good enough for me, but do you think that he gets loose here in the first game?
Yeah, I think he's going to do really well. I think that he's going to definitely get one touchdown, maybe two, because he's got a lot to prove. I mean, he's got to live his whole season in these last 6 games, and he's got to prove that he can. And fortunately for him, he's in a situation where the team has a chance to make the playoffs. It's not like, well, I got suspended for 10 games and I come back and they're 3-7, so I don't have. No, we have a chance to possibly do something, and he could really possibly push this team over the top and get them into the playoffs. So he's really got something to play for personally and for the team. So I think he's going to do pretty well. They have to do a good job of not giving him, like, putting him out there on every play. But I think that, shuffling him in and out and, giving him a few shots, I think he's going to definitely break loose once and maybe twice.
And I will say this, he did answer all the questions the right way this week. I was curious if he was going to say anything that would turn into some stupid story that people could talk about for 48 hours or something like that. But said all the right things about being a great teammate. Now we'll see, man. I'm very curious to see. I liked what Shanahan said about, he said, listen, I've had big-time receivers before. I've had Garcon. I've had Andre Johnson. Never forced those guys the ball either. They complement the offense, and then their talents end up taking advantage of it. And I'm with it. Like I said, man, if the scheming alone opens up the run game, I'll take it. If the scheming alone opens up the other guys and they're running wide open because we got to keep a safety over on Josh Gordon's side or we've got to shadow somebody over the top, hey, that works. And that's every bit as good as coming in and Josh Gordon catching 300 yards and everybody else combining for 40, as we've seen happen before too, So whatever it is that makes the defense have to pay attention to it, because I think Atlanta's coming in thinking that the Browns are going to be focused heavily on Josh Gordon. So if it changes their plan, that's good enough for me. What else you got? Anything circled here that the Browns need to look out for as we head into this thing?
Well, yeah, the last thing that I think they have to watch out is for Devin Hester. I mean,
well, obviously,
he's been around a long time. He's still one of the most dangerous return men in the game, and they're really going to have to concentrate on him because he can really make you pay. And if they can just keep him from breaking loose, I think they'll be all right. But he's worrisome, I'll tell you that.
Oh, absolutely. That's something that the Browns mentioned several times this week, a name. Anytime coaches bring a guy up over and over, because most times it's in general terms, but the ones that they speak of specifically, that this isn't the first time they've spoken individually about that person during the week. And Devin Hester's one that Chris Tabor and the Browns have focused back on as well. And you know what? Flip side of him, one of the best kick returners there is on the Browns. We've had all these issues going on. Marlon Moore may not be able to go this weekend, and word is that Travis Benjamin may just return. Hey, nothing to see here. We'll just pretend we didn't do this for the last 10 weeks, and he'll just go back and try it again as they continue to try to solve the kick returning issues here for the Browns. So I guess Travis Benjamin will be next man up. And you know what? If we don't have anybody, I think you and I said this a couple weeks ago. To me, if we don't have anybody that's protecting the ball any better, then to go with Travis Benjamin, because he's at least got the possibility of breaking him back every time he catches it.
That's right. And I think the fact that Gordon's going to be back, I think Benjamin, is not going to have so much of the onus of him to play receiver. I think they'll free him up a little bit to do some kick returning, and I think that's going to really help this team, because really nothing, has worked too well so far for the Browns this year as far as returning goes. I think Benjamin might be able to do that. Although, they still need to mix things up and not put everything on his shoulders, I think.
Absolutely. What do you think happens, man, when it's all said and done? This is a tough challenge for the Browns to go on. I mean, listen, on the road, it's hard to win. In Atlanta, they make a lot of noise. Again, a tough environment, but nothing impossible. I think the Browns can go down here and win this game, but do they? What do you think?
Well, I got to say, I was really skeptical throughout this week. I was really just because the Browns have had so many injuries, especially, this week with Dansby and Sheard. It's like, oh, my gosh, we're coming down the end, and everybody's getting hurt. This is really a bad deal. The Falcons are picking up a little bit of momentum. But I kind of think that the Browns are going to be able to pull this one out, because I'm asking myself, which of these teams is going to be able to keep their offense diversified, keep the running and the passing both going together, and not be limited to being a one-dimensional team. I think it's going to end up being kind of a track meet. I think the Browns are actually going to get the running game going again. I think that the Browns running attack of West and Crowell is going to be able to carry the ball better than Steven Jackson and the Falcons, and I think that's going to be the difference in the game. It's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a shootout, but I think that the Browns are going to pull this one out barely, but it's going to be 31-28.
Wow. See, I'm everything you said, I'm right there with you on that, man, because I'm looking all week long. I'm going, man, you know what? And I see Vashon in the chat room. I'm kind of with him too, man. I mean, that's the thing I worry about is can Hayden, can Screen, can Williams, can these guys make sure to keep up with their assignments and not get beat? No double moves, none of that. I mean, because